I'm Mary Evert, and you are in my kitchen. Oh, and so is Kathy Roebling. She's behind the camera right now. And we're going to do a lesson that's geared toward understanding and learning how to use the InstaPot. So we're going to do a simple recipe for carnitas. I have tested it and it's delicious. You will love it. But first I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the InstaPot, because I don't know how many of you guys actually know something about it. This is what the machine looks like right here. And then we're going to run through some of these instruction steps along the way. So, but the pot is right over here, and Kathy can get that. And it's in the off position right now. So you can see that it has a container inside that cooks, and then, I mean, this is the cooking part, and this is the pot, and you can see exactly some measurements and stuff in there. The machine itself is built on the idea of a pressure cooker that a lot of us who are older than most of you guys remember from our mother's kitchen. And we'll explain the face of this with the different settings on it. But we're making something that is not too complicated. And this is a little device that's the key to forming the pressure. It's in the top. And so when you start the machine, you put it there and it says sealing. So what's going to happen is that pressure will build and this little silver thing will come level with this thing right here. And then depending on the setting below, it'll go. And then there's several ways you can stop this pressure cooker. It has a thing called a natural release. And that means that this will gradually let out steam, and this thing comes up on its own. It takes almost 25 to 30 minutes to do that. If you want a quick release, you do so at your own risk. I usually use a wooden spoon or something like that to push this down, and that's the release right there. The steam will come shooting up, and what you don't want to do is get your fingers anywhere near this. So I always use an implement to do this. And eventually that little silver thing goes down into the well and assumes this position. So that's the only tricky part of this. And it takes care of itself. So before we get to that, we're going to try to mix up this recipe. And Kathy's got it right here to show you guys. In this mixture here, we have the first of the top stuff there down through the cinnamon is ready on the plate right here. So the first thing I do is I put in a couple of tablespoons of olive oil into a bowl, and then you add 4 cloves of chopped garlic. That goes in there. This is really hard, you know, it's just a matter of throwing all this stuff in the same bowl. And then we have 2 teaspoons of the kosher salt. And we have 1 teaspoon of pepper. And we have, let's see, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. I'm going out of order, but you guys will know what I'm doing here. There's 2 teaspoons of dried oregano minced. And then the last thing to go in is the cumin. And this is the jar of cumin. I started out with the recipe as it stands, which is 1 teaspoon of ground cumin. And I felt it didn't have much kick. It's a delicious flavor, but if you want something that's spicier, you add a little bit more. So I added a little bit more, maybe closer to 2 teaspoons rather than 1. And I just wanted to tell you that was the one thing I did change, because I have a recipe all made already. So this is just going to get stirred up here and wait until I cut the meat. Now, what you use according to the recipe is a shoulder, pork shoulder or pork butt. It goes by several different names. This recipe calls for 2 pounds of boneless pork. Well, I couldn't find boneless, so we've got bones to deal with. This here thing right here is a boning knife, and it'll help us get around things. But meanwhile, I'm using my big monster here to get started on this. But you can see right here, there's a bone on this end of the meat. And we'll get around to that. What I'm going to do is take off, I cut it like this because it's easier then to see where the fat patterns are. Because some of this stuff on the bottom looks like bacon, because it is. And what I'm going to do with a paring knife is cut some of that off so that you don't have so much fat in your sauce at the end. So try not to kill yourself doing this. And you're supposed to make it in 2-inch pieces. So I'll just throw stuff in there. And then I have my little throwaway thing here. So to get rid of fat. So I'm just going to keep doing this. And you can see that there are some strips of fat in here. That's part of the deal. You have to have some of that with the carnitas meat. And you don't have to be exactly square, but it helps to get some of that fat off. Kathy, do you have any tips or any ideas?
No, I think it looks good. I've never done it like this before. I've done it where it's been in the oven and the whole piece of meat together. So this is interesting to see that you cut it up in pieces like this.
Well, Kathy asked me earlier whether or not this could be a recipe used with a slow cooker, and it can. It's just that I don't have a slow cooker book. And so for 2 pounds of boneless pork and getting that through a cooking process where it's very, very tender, you may have to get creative and look through your slow cooker book to find an alternative use if you don't want to do it in the oven, or if you don't want to do it if you don't have a InstaPot to do it in. Okay, see, this is not an art form here. You can just keep going at it, and if you find a hunk of fat you don't like, take it out, put it over here, use it for some other thing.
And how many people would this feed, Mary?
I think this feeds 6.
About 6. Okay.
Yeah, but this is bigger than 3 pounds because it's got the bone in it. Okay. And I just hit the bone. There it is right there. So that's why this kind of a knife is good, because it's flexible and it can get around the edges of the bone without too much trouble. Whereas if you were using the bigger knife, you'd be stuck going around a corner. I did sharpen these very, very carefully in advance. There's nothing like a sharp knife if you're going to do some cutting up like this, but be careful because the tip is sharp. So you can whack yourself really good if you aren't careful. All right, it's come along just well. Now this is carnitas is something you can use for burritos. You can use it for tacos. You can I've used it where you serve it with mashed potatoes. You can use the juice that comes out of this, and I'll show you that on the one that's already completed on my counter here. And you can either make soup out of it, or you can make a gravy and make this a very interesting meal, other than just using for burritos and tacos. This thing is going to come right off. Now, what I'm going to do is, just for the flavor of it, I'm going to put the bone in the crock pot. But obviously, that is something that you won't be eating. You'll just get the flavor in there. And I don't think that'll hurt a thing. In the InstaPot, did I say crock pot? I was thinking about it. I'm still wondering how long it would take. Now, some people may want to use lard for something, pork fat. I don't know. You could freeze this stuff and use it for another recipe. There's a fair amount that comes off, but that's where the animal is built. I like the piece I had this morning because there was no bone in it. It was much easier to
Makes
cut
it
up.
easier. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does.
Is there a difference in price between a bone in and a bone out?
Well,
on it?
obviously you're paying for the bone.
Yeah.
It's so it's going to be a little more expensive per pound. I got this at Ralph's, and the guy had to go in the back to find it. So if you don't see it out on the shelf in a store, just ask, because it's a fairly common cut of meat that they have. And this is going to get ugly looking. But guess what? All the meat that's left on this bone that goes into the InstaPot, it'll actually fall off the bone. So you're not wasting anything. It's just hanging on for dear life. And I don't want to spend the rest of the day cutting pork. That's the end of that. I've done a lot of cooking. One of my inspirations from when I was a young woman was when Julia Childs came out on Boston TV with her first French chef cookbook show that she had. And I was just fascinated by the woman because I love to cook and I love French cooking. And she made it just so easy to do. So I've been a real fan of hers, but she doesn't do carnitas. I can't imagine why. But if y'all are interested in a French recipe sometime, I could do one of those pretty easily. It wouldn't be for a InstaPot, but it would be a classic French preparation for a meal, either a dessert or a main course.
That sounds good.
Well, how are we doing here, Kathy?
Looks good. You're almost there, aren't you?
I'm almost there, and then we can start the process. And this, it doesn't matter what this looks like at this point. We're done.
Okay.
Now the thing we do next is we pour all of this stuff that we mixed earlier, and you mix it up so that each piece of meat gets some of the flavor on it.
Just use your fingers, huh?
Nope, I'm not going to use them. The one hand is already destroyed. But you want to really mix this up well and get ready to throw it in the crock pot. Now I'm going to do something different than what the recipe says with the crock pot, the InstaPot, just to show you how this works. I'm going to put it on saute. And this is what I love about this machine. It doesn't require the cover for saute. It's going to heat. And so if you're making something like a beef stew or something and you want to brown the beef first, all you do is heat that up, and see, it's ready right now, and put a little bit of oil in there, and you can saute onions and whatever else very, very quickly in there. And you don't have to use another pan to make the brown fond that you find on mushrooms or meats or whatever. And it's very, very convenient because it's literally one pot cooking. These things run about $80 if you find them on sale somewhere. Costco has them. I've seen them at the base, so they're very easy to find. So what I'm going to do before I add that in, my next ingredients are, I'm going to put a little oil in here. Just a tad. Because I've got it on saute. So that's maybe a tablespoon at the most. I chopped a cup of onions, and that should start sizzling pretty soon. And we'll just let it sizzle so you can see what that looks like in the pan. And with that,
Oh, I can smell those onions.
you can smell them, yeah. So meanwhile, get rid of some of this stuff and take you over to the crock pot, because that's where the action is for the moment. I'm heating up my countertop oven because I've already got the meat here, and the next step of the recipe after you let this thing cook for a while is to brown the meat under the broiler. You drain it out of the liquid and then you brown it. And so that will give us another element of the cooking process. Well, wouldn't you know it, it's not doing much yet. Now, the other thing I've learned the hard way is you may notice that this is over by the sink. Well, actually, it's not under the countertop because the steam will come up and it really will destroy your cabinets, just like a coffee pot will do if you put it in the wrong place. Wouldn't you know it? Come on, guys, let's go. Well, this is not a critical step in the thing, so I'll just let that go and start putting in the other ingredients, which is 1.5 cups. No, it's 1/2 cup of fresh orange juice. So that goes right in there. On top of that, 1 bay leaf, nice big size, that goes in there, and 1.5 cups of beef broth. Now you can use, if you use the paste, the beef paste that can be made into bouillon, that's fine. I used a combination of that and canned bouillon. That goes in. So I believe that's the whole list all the way down to the end. So we put in the onion, the bay leaf, and the chicken broth, beef broth. So now what I'm going to do is put this bone in right on the bottom, in the middle there. Can you see that, Kat? And then all of this goes in the pot. Just push it around a little bit so it's all kind of in the liquid. And that's it. So the next thing is, this is where you want to watch what's going on with the dial here. You turn off the saute, and that's this button right here. So that's off, and the cover fits on just like this. And there's little dee things going on in there. So this is back because this is sealed now, and what we're waiting for is this to come up. But first we have to put the timer on. For this recipe, you can see that there's a meat stew area here, and that's what you push. And adjust takes care of these 3 buttons. So it's usually right there, but we want more, and that's what it tells you to do. So we now have the pot doing its own thing, and you'll see it give a beep. Now the pressure's building inside, and we leave it alone and don't worry about it. So Kathy, we can come on over here.
Okay.
And I'll show them the steps to do next. So let's pretend that is all done. And this is what it looks like when it comes out. It's still got the, you can see the onions, and you can see some of the garlic and everything else in there. This is the juice that is drained out right here. And that's what really makes wonderful soup broth. You might add other stuff to it, but it also makes a lovely gravy if you want to serve this like with mashed potatoes or noodles. So I'm putting this on a broiler pan. That has to drain about 5 minutes once you take it out. So this is my sort of matched up how I figured out how to do this. And then I kept this on it so the meat would stay warm enough. Now, this just goes around, mushed around, because what we're going to do is brown up this meat. It already looks great. You can see how tender it is. It just falls apart. But we want to dry it out a little bit. have some fun with it. Okay,
Looks good. Looks
going in
delicious.
the oven for about 5 minutes. At least that's what I think it says. Let me check that. All right, doesn't say right here. So it's 5 minutes until browned. And you can add some of the cooking liquid to it if you want. So that's what the recipe sort of tells you. So are people online? Do you want to ask any questions?
I don't see anybody right at the moment. So,
All right,
Okay.
so we'll just continue with this.
Mhm.
Some of the other types of things you can do with the crock pot that I find very interesting, and I haven't tried all this stuff, but they have things that have to do with beans and grains. They've got breakfast food, so you can actually do an omelet or one of those breakfast quiches or things that you do, or stratas. That's what I like to make at Christmas time. They have appetizers and snacks in here, which are really fast. You can do all sorts of things with the meats that we've talked about, but it's particularly good for the type of meat that needs to cook a little bit longer. They have a Cuban style pork ragu, different kinds of meat sauces with spaghetti sauce to it, pasta. And they have a pork loin with parsnips and carrots, which is sort of like a Sunday roast dinner. And then there's all sorts of chicken recipes, fish and shellfish. The salmon is very, very good. And they actually have a steamer tray. Let me show you that. It goes inside the crock pot. You put a little water in it and you have the handle sticking up like that. You can actually make a cheesecake in there with, and I haven't tried that, but they've got all sorts of poached pears and other types of things that you can do, like steamed cauliflower with cayenne and Parmesan cheese. I mean, all sorts of things. And then they actually have some basics with the pressure cook. Wait a minute, there's a slow cook to the chicken broth. So they do have some recipes in here that use the slow cook methodology also. You can make oatmeal, yogurt, strawberry jams, all sorts of things. So it's a very, very versatile machine. And the thing that I like is the saute part. Here's another nice picture of it with a Sunday roast dinner in it. And then another picture, of course, there's a glass of wine right there. That can't be all bad.
It's like
And
Julia
then-
Childs.
Yes,
Her
of
wine.
course, you have to have the wine. But for example, if you look at the recipe in the book for carnitas, it tells you here how much prep time it takes. And you saw that went pretty fast. It's the cutting up the meat that's the worst in terms of time. And then how much it takes for the closed pot thing, which is going on right now. And then how much is the release. Here it says natural, so you know you got to wait till it comes down. The little silver thing goes down by itself. And that's sort of some ideas of what you can do. There's ribs,
Those look good.
pork barbecue ribs, and interesting little things, chicken tamales. I mean, if you like tamales, they've got a great recipe for that here in steamed. Let's see, there's a Cuban black beans and rice recipe. You can do corn on the cob with the husk still on it and put some lovely butter on it, herb butter. Nice way to do corn very quickly. This is a very good recipe for Brussels sprouts with bacon and balsamic vinegar. So just to give you a hint of the possibilities, and here they actually show you how to prep for chicken noodle soup. And so it's a very, very nice cookbook. This does not come with the machine. I ordered that separately, and I think I got everything on Amazon. So let's see what's going on in the oven and if we've gotten anywhere. Get my things here. Go ahead, Kathy.
So yeah, see it roasting in there. Okay.
It
kitchen
can go a
smelling
little
good.
longer. But it's not quite 5 minutes yet. But you get the idea. That's the end stage. You can take it out and eat it right away, or you can put it away for another time. So that's all we have today. You know, Kathy and I are both going to get in the picture. Turn that machine around.
All right.
Here we
Hello.
are. Thanks for being there with us. We'll see you again in the future.
Enjoy it. Bon appetit.
Enjoy. Bon appetit. That's it.